We're in Genesis chapter 30 now, and we're going to look at what I consider family feud. This is a family that was meant to be in unity. This was a family that was probably in unity before Jacob showed up. Most importantly, they were probably in unity before Laban did what he did that now created strife between sisters. But let's just look at all the things that went down with this family. When I read it, I felt bad for Jacob. I was like, poor guy. Multiple wives that he did not ask for, by the way. All right, so we're going to start with verses 1, and we're going to read it through verse 13, and then speak on it. And what I did was selected this section as what I would consider God's will on things we should not do. I'll start from verse 1, which says, when Rachel saw that she conceived no children for Jacob, she envied her sister and said to Jacob, give me children, or else I will die. Then Jacob became furious with Rachel, and he said, am I in the place of God, who has denied you children? She said, here, take my maid Bilhah, and go into her, and when the baby comes, she will deliver it, while sitting on my knees, so that by her I may also have children to count as my own. So she gave him Bilhah, her maid, as a secondary wife, and Jacob went into her. Bilhah conceived and gave birth to a son for Jacob. Then Rachel said, God has judged and vindicated me, and has heard my plea, and has given me a son through my maid. So she named him Dan, he judged. Bilhah, Rachel's maid, conceived again and gave birth to a second son for Jacob. So Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings in prayer to God, I have struggled with my sister and have prevailed. So she named him Naphtali, my wrestling. When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing children, she took Zilpah, her maid, and gave her to Jacob as a secondary wife. Zilpah, Leah's maid, gave birth to a son for Jacob. Then Leah said, how fortunate. So she named him Gad, good fortune. Zilpah, Leah's maid, gave birth to a second son for Jacob. Then Leah said, I am happy, for women will call me happy. So she named him Asher, happy. So let me start with some of the things that is God's will, do not do. Like, God wants you to not do them. Number one was envy. So what set this whole thing in motion was envy. It was the fact that Rachel was envious of the fact that Leah was having children and she wasn't. And she didn't understand the reasoning behind that. And a lot of us, we do that, where God does something and makes things happen that is not in our favor. We don't try to inquire from God, why is this thing happening? Instead, we take matters into our own hands and decide to become our own problem solvers, really, which was what she did. I think she should have taken a page from Rebecca, who, when they were seeking a child, sought God concerning while she wasn't able to conceive. And God had spoken to them and said, hey, you're going to have two nations. But nah, she decided to take matters into her hands and move things along like Sarah did when she gave Hagar to Abraham. We see here Rachel doing the same thing, giving her maid Bilhah to Jacob. And so this action has now caused a reaction from Leah, who goes, well, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to do mine too. Another thing that I saw here was Rachel blaming Jacob for not having children. And I was like, isn't that easy for women to blame men for things that men don't have absolute control over? I'm just asking for the married people. Because this is like the second time I've seen a woman in the Bible blame a man for something that they did or was out of the man's control. Remember when Sarah blamed Abraham for Hagar's behavior when she was pregnant with Ishmael. What I saw in these few verses was a family feud between sisters. They were competing against each other. From the time that they were married to the same man, they stopped being sisters. They became rivals. We're gonna read verses 14 to 21 and speak on that. So verse 14 says, now at the time of wheat harvest, Reuben, the eldest child, went and found some mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. But Leah answered, is it a small thing that you have taken my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? So Rachel said, Jacob shall sleep with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes. When Jacob came in from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must sleep with me tonight, for I have in fact hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he slept with her that night. God listened and answered the prayer of Leah, and she conceived and gave birth to a fifth son for Jacob. Then Leah said, God has given me my reward because I have given my maid to my husband. So she named him Issachar. Leah conceived again and gave birth to a sixth son for Jacob. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good marriage gift for my husband. Now he will live with me, regarding me with honor as his wife, because I have given birth to six sons. So she named them Zebulun. Afterwards, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. I'm going to categorize this as lessons learned. One of the things that I saw here also is that Leah and Rachel, not only did they had such a discord and rivalry between each other, but it was a huge separation that they could not even share anything with each other. So basically, if Rachel was literally starving to death, Leah would let her starve to death, because then she would be getting rid of the competition. It was like when I was reading these verses, that was what it seemed like to me. And now I see also here that these women did not have regard for their husband. It was almost as if they treated their husband as a commodity. Rachel was like, hey, I will trade my husband with you for a night for your son's mandrakes. Nobody asked Jacob how he felt about it, if that's something he wanted to do. None of that. It was Jacob got home from a hard day's work, and Leah's like, hey, you got to do me the do tonight because I've hired you to do the do with me tonight. And Jacob was like, okay. I feel like Jacob has seen so many of their strife and rivalry that he doesn't even get involved anymore. He's like, okay, for the sake of peace, yeah, no problem. I'll do whatever you want. I mean, that's what it looked like to me when I was reading this. Let's just look into verses 21 and 24, and then we'll look at God's character in this case. So verses 21 says, afterwards, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered the prayers of Rachel, and God thought of her and opened her womb so that she would conceive. So she conceived and gave birth to a son. And she said, God has taken away my disgrace and humiliation. She named him Joseph. May he add, and said, may the Lord add to me another son. The thing that I saw here is that, number one, God remembered Rachel. Number two, God did not close Rachel's womb as a punishment. I believe that God closed Rachel's womb to build her character up. To prevent her from actually being worse. Let's think this through. If you've read the book of Samuel, which is a few books after this, there's a story about Peninnah and Hannah. Both women were married to a man called Elkanah. Peninnah had children and Hannah did not. And Peninnah would taunt Hannah because of that. And she would mock her and make her feel bad, and just, it was cruel. It was really cruel. And the reason is because of this rivalry and competition among wives. I have something you don't have. I'm going to make you feel bad about it. And also, I believe in that book as well, Elkanah loved Hannah over Peninnah. And so it's kind of the same situation here. I believe that God wanted Rachel to not be in a position to taunt and mock and, just make Leah's life miserable, because Leah was the wife that was not loved. And so Leah had to survive as an unloved wife in an unloved marriage. And so if Rachel had had children before Leah, or even had children the way Leah did, she would have driven Leah to depression, literally. Because these people did not care about each other's feelings. They did not care about each other's well-being. They did not even care about their husband. It was about the competition that they had between each other that they were focused on. I would just move into verses 25 to 30, and we'll see another aspect of God's character that I saw here. Verse 25 says, "Now when Rachel had given birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, 'Send me away that I may go back to my own place and to my own country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you. Let me go, for you know the work which I have done for you.' But Laban said to him, 'If I have found favor in your sight, stay with me, for I have learned from the omens and divination and by experience that the Lord has blessed me because of you.' He said, 'Name your wages and I will give it to you.' Jacob answered him, 'You know how I have served you and how your possessions, your cattle and sheep and goat have fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased and multiplied abundantly. And the Lord has favored you with blessings wherever I turned. But now, when shall I provide for my own household?' What I saw was, number one, God blessed Laban because of Jacob. What this showed me is that from the time that Jacob had been working for Laban, he had been honest in his dealings. And I was like, that is a 180 from the guy that left his parents, the guy that bought the brother's birthright for a plate of food, the guy that stole his brother's blessings, actually, inheritance. That same guy is now dealing honestly. The guy that lied and manipulated his father is now the same guy that is dealing honestly with Laban. And let me tell you, Laban is far from being an honest guy. Laban is what we call in Nigeria 419. Laban, from what I've read in the Bible, is a con man that would trick and steal and deceive to have his way. But why is Jacob this way with Laban? It's because now Jacob has a different perspective. At this point in time, he's dealing with God. And so he cannot do the same things that he used to do, because at this point he has a relationship with God, and there is a transformation that is happening in his life. And I just wanted to say that to emphasize that you can come to God as you are, and it's always welcome. God will always welcome you as you are. But when you come to God, expect that change will happen, because God will work in you to build in you and bring out of you a better you, the you that he had designed from day one, before sin crept in, before influence came into your life from, in this case, the parents. Because you see, Jacob's behavior is a reflection of Rebecca's behavior, which says that it runs in the family because Laban is even worse. But we also see that because Jacob was dealing in honesty with Laban, God was blessing Laban for the sake of Jacob. So this whole time, Jacob was not making profit for all his work. He was working for all those years for his wife, the wife that he actually wanted, that he was meant to only work 7 years for, now worked 14 years for. We're going to read further verses 31 to 43 and speak on that. So Laban asked, "What shall I give you?" Jacob replied, "You shall not give me anything, but if you will do this one thing for me, which I now propose, I will again pasture and keep your flock. Let me pass through your entire flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep, every dark or black one among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and those shall be my wages. So my honesty will be evident for me later. Later, when you come for an accounting concerning my wages, everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and dark among the young lambs, if found with me, shall be considered stolen." And Laban said, "Good, let it be done as you say." So on that same day, Laban secretly removed the male goats that were streaked and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one with white on it, and all the dark ones among the sheep, and put them in the care of his sons. And he put a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob. And Jacob was then left in care of the rest of Laban's flock. Then Jacob took branches of fresh poplar and almond plane trees and peeled white strips in them, exposing the white in the branches. Then he set the branches which he had peeled in the front of the flocks on the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink. And they mated and conceived when they came to drink. So the flocks mated and conceived by the branches, and the flocks gave birth to streaked, speckled, and spotted offspring. Jacob separated the lambs as he had done with the peeled branches. He made the flocks face toward the streak, and all the dark or black in the new flock of Laban. And he put his own herds apart by themselves and did not put them where they could breed with Laban's flock. Furthermore, whenever the stronger animals of the flocks were breeding, Jacob would place the branches on the sides of the flock in the watering troughs so that they would mate and conceive among the branches. But when the flock was sickly, he did not put the branches there. So the sicker animals were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. So Jacob became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks of sheep and goats, and female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. I just want to point out here in the sense that Jacob was business savvy. I want to start with that. But I also want to point out that Laban, of course, showed himself again as a deceiver and a manipulator, a thief that will rob you of anything that is meant to be yours, anything that is meant to be entitled to you, rob you of it. He agreed to Jacob's request, and then in the middle of the night, later on that day, he did the exact opposite, just like he did when Jacob was requesting to marry Rachel. He did the exact same thing here. Jacob has to beat him at his own game, but still do it in an honest way. And I believe that God gave Jacob the idea to do what he did in order to get spotted and streaked animals from the flock. And it seemed like God caused him to prosper in that way, where most of the animals that were being born were spotted and streaked, and he knew to mate the stronger animals by the water with the almond tree stuff, so that he could make sure that they come out spotted and streaked. And he became even more wealthy than before. than when Laban tried to rob him of whatever of the animals. And so what I saw here also was restoration. I want to say this to encourage us that even when people try to deal with you craftily or dishonestly, you deal with them honestly. Pray to God to give you ideas on how to overcome that deception and that dishonesty where someone is trying to take advantage of you. And God will give you the ideas to actually overcome that, because that's what happened with Jacob here. Was he had the idea to overcome him being cheated by Laban, and God gave him success with that. And so what I'm saying is, don't do tit for tat with people. If someone cheats you on something, don't cheat them back. Just ask God for guidance on how to approach it, what to do, and how to overcome that situation. All right, so we're going to move into the prayer points and the verse of the day. So I have a few prayer points here. And number one is that you pray that there'll be no strife, envy, disunity, contention in your family. It's one little thing that can spark and cause a whole bunch of stuff within a family. And so you ask God to give you and every member of your family the wisdom to deal with each other with love and in one accord. And then the second prayer point is going to ask God to remember you for good concerning every promise that He has made to you. The third prayer point is to ask God to give you workable ideas that will give you the ability to grow wealth. And not only that, but also pray that God will open your eyes to the needs that people have around you, and also give you the ability to provide solution for those needs. Because the Bible says that God has given us the ability to make wealth. But sometimes we just need direction. We need guidance on how to do that. So turn to God and ask Him for that. And with that being said, I will move on to the verse of the day. And I chose verse 22 as the verse of the day, which says, "Then God remembered the prayers of Rachel, and God thought of her and opened her womb so that she could conceive." I chose this one because for anyone that is waiting on God, anyone that is going through one challenge or the other, and you've been crying and calling on God to help you, to remember you, believe and understand that God will remember you. It could be at an appointed time, it could be in due season, but He never forgot you, and He remembers. And in due time, He will do whatever it is that He said that He would do. And that's because He is a faithful God. Well, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really had a good time sharing with you on the whole family drama in Jacob's family, really. And I'm going to see you tomorrow, and we're going to discuss Jacob's journey back to Canaan, and what he goes through, with his family as well. The family drama continues, let me tell you. All right, so thank you so much, and have a good night. Be blessed.